Welcome to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. I'm your host, Molly Watts. If you want to change your drinking habits and create a peaceful relationship with alcohol, you're in the right place. This podcast explores the strategies I use to overcome a lifetime of family alcohol abuse, more than 30 years of anxiety and worry about my own drinking, and what felt like an unbreakable daily drinking habit. Becoming an alcohol minimalist means removing excess alcohol from your life so it doesn't remove you from life. It means being able to take alcohol or leave it without feeling deprived. It means to live peacefully, being able to enjoy a glass of wine without feeling guilty and without needing to finish the bottle. With science on our side, we'll shatter your past patterns and eliminate your excuses. Changing your relationship with alcohol is possible. I'm here to help you do it. Let's start now. Well, hello and welcome or welcome back to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast with me, your host, Molly Watts, coming to you from, it's just cold and rainy, like super gray, super rainy, super cold, not cold enough to snow, of course, because I live in Oregon and we just can't seem to get it to 32. It just has to hover around 37 and be cold and miserable and rainy. I don't have another word for it this week, so that's what you got. Don't come to Oregon in February. It's my least favorite month. I got to tell you that much. All right, on to the show. This week, I want to talk about an article that I shared with my Facebook group that I saw on LinkedIn from Dr. Jaffe. And Dr. Jaffe, if you don't know who he is, I've had him on the podcast before. He's actually on the board of directors for Sunnyside. He collaborates with Moderation Management, and he wrote a great book called The Abstinence Myth, which, again, I'll link the podcast episode down in my show notes. He has a new book now called Unhooked, and I haven't read it yet, but I think this article was a part of kind of that conversation from Unhooked. And it got me thinking because it wasn't sensational or provocative, but rather it raised a question that feels timely and important right now. And the article really made me pause and reflect on some things, and I think it's worth discussing. So that's what we're going to do today. He made a good point, and that is that for a long time, alcohol was the main way that people could escape really, their issues in life, and it was accepted by society. But there are fewer people drinking now, which is great news, right? As an alcohol minimalist, it's what I'm always striving for. And we're happy about that change, of course. But we may be overlooking something really significant. And we want to make sure that what we see in terms of people reducing their use of alcohol is actually focused on something more important, like becoming more emotionally resilient and not just trading one problem for another. We need to consider how people are coping and whether or not it's actually a better solution. We may not actually be becoming mentally healthier. We may just be becoming more varied in how we escape. And I want to slow down and really unpack that. My work here is centered around alcohol, but at its core, it's really about helping people develop emotional resilience. It's about finding the strength to truly feel and experience life rather than constantly trying to control or escape from it. I believe that's what this podcast has always been about, empowering people to build a deeper connection with themselves and their emotions, and to live a more authentic, wholehearted, 50-50, good, bad, experience it all life. So let's take a closer look at what's going on in our culture, particularly when it comes to the increasing use of cannabis. And we're going to delve into this topic and try to understand what's behind this trend. And we're also going to explore some of those important questions surrounding it. Are we genuinely becoming more resilient, or are we simply swapping substances? So the first thing we got to talk about is the decline in alcohol use. It is clear that the way people drink in the United States is changing. In 2025, Gallup did a poll, and it shows that only 54% of Americans now report drinking alcohol. And that is the lowest level recorded in decades. Nearly half of Americans say that they are actively trying to drink less. And about 65% of Gen Z reports plans to cut down or abstain entirely. Now, that's not anecdotal. That is population level data from Gallup. So it's good things, right? That is good information. It appears like a very positive change in terms of alcohol use, and it is. We're also seeing increased awareness of alcohol's health risks. More Americans now view even moderate drinking as potentially harmful. And when we remember that alcohol is linked to approximately 178,000 deaths per year here in the United States, it certainly makes sense that people are becoming more mindful and they are reassessing. Hopefully, they are really taking what I say here at Alcohol Minimalist to heart and looking at that and deciding and choosing to be an alcohol minimalist. The thing that I want you to hear, because it's important, is the nuance. If you are drinking less intentionally, if you are drinking less and you're doing so intentionally, that is meaningful. If you are questioning your habits, then that is absolutely growth. If you are becoming more conscious about your choices, then that matters. But here's where I want us to pause. Behavioral change and emotional growth are not automatically the same thing. And that's the key difference that Dr. Jaffe is getting at. Because while alcohol use is declining, cannabis use is rising. And, I live in Oregon. Oregon was one of the first states to legalize marijuana, did it years and years ago now. And I have to tell you, it's always been a sore subject for me because what we know is that legalizing anything means that increased use will happen, right? That's just a basic fact. And I saw it happen as my sons became adults and watched them. And I actually remember while they were in high school, they were being taught in health class that cannabis was a healthier, quote unquote, drug than alcohol. And according to Monitoring the Future data from the University of Michigan, 41% of young adults report cannabis use in the past year. 29% report use in the past month, and roughly 10.8% report daily use. The CDC estimates that about 52.5 million Americans used cannabis in 2021, which is roughly 19% of the population. About 3 in 10 people who use cannabis are likely to have problems with it, which can lead to something called cannabis use disorder. Now, let's stay balanced here. Researchers at Harvard Health have made a surprising claim. They think that cannabis might be safer than drinking alcohol, like a lot safer. And this is especially interesting when you consider how many people die from drinking too much alcohol. A study from Brown University found that when people used cannabis, they drank about 20 to 27% less alcohol in a controlled lab setting. And so this raises some interesting questions about whether cannabis could actually help people cut back on their drinking. Now, being somebody that's in this space and having worked with hundreds of people, if not thousands of you listening to the podcast, I can tell you anecdotally that people often use cannabis as a way to help them drink less. And I don't want to say that there's anything wrong with that in terms of trading one healthier habit for, if cannabis is actually healthier, then, right, that might be a better trade-off. It seems that in certain situations, cannabis is actually helping people drink less alcohol, which is a good thing. But that's not exactly what I really want to focus on today. It's not about comparing the physical risks of these different substances. The question is whether substitution equals resilience, because those two things are not interchangeable. When someone reduces alcohol consumption and replaces it with cannabis, what has changed? The chemical has changed. The social narrative may have changed. The physical risk profile may have changed. But has the relationship to discomfort changed? That's the deeper question. Hey, just a quick break to talk with you for a minute about Sunnyside. You hear me talk about it on the show often, and it really is my number one recommendation for a mindful drinking app. People use this tool in my groups, in my classes, and they tell me all the time how much they really appreciate the fact that Sunnyside is a very positive reinforcement. And what I mean by that is that when you track your drinks, and let's just say you planned for one drink and you ended up having two. If you're honest and you track that second drink, you're not going to get a message that shames you in any way or reprimands you. You're actually going to get positive reinforcement for tracking a drink that you didn't plan on, and some ideas and some suggestions for maybe going and grabbing a snack or getting some water. Sunnyside is like having a coach in your pocket, and I love that. You can try it for a 15-day free trial. Go to www.sunnyside.co/Molly to get started today. Becoming more emotionally resilient means you increase your capacity to feel discomfort without immediately needing relief. It means you can tolerate boredom without filling it instantly. You can experience stress without anesthetizing it. You can feel loneliness without reflexively trying to distract yourself. You can sit with anxiety long enough to understand it instead of trying to just shut it down. That is resilience. On the other hand, substitution is a process that leaves the underlying beliefs and values unchanged. It just replaces one thing with another. If I still believe I need something to turn off my brain, then it doesn't really matter whether that something is wine or THC. If I still believe I deserve relief at the end of the day, then the object providing that relief can definitely rotate. And if I still believe I can't handle this feeling, then I will continue to reach outward instead of inward. The object changes, but the mechanism stays the same. So Dr. Jaffe in that article wanted us to think about that. And when I wrote Breaking the Bottle Legacy, I emphasized that psychological dependence is often the true driver long before physical addiction develops. Most people who struggle with alcohol are not physically dependent. They are psychologically attached. And this connection is rooted in those core beliefs, right? The core beliefs that I was just talking about. Core beliefs that I need something to turn off my brain. I deserve relief. I can't handle this feeling. When you believe that alcohol is what helps you unwind, that alcohol is your reward, that alcohol makes things more fun, if you don't ever examine those beliefs, then removing alcohol alone doesn't dismantle the belief framework. It creates space that can be filled by something new. And it gives that new substance a opportunity to take the place of alcohol. I want to make this clear. My goal is not to be against cannabis. I'm not anti-pleasure. I'm not anti-relaxation. I am anti-unexamined coping, because chronic reliance on any external regulator can quietly prevent us from building internal capacity. The thing about cannabis that I'm cautious about, just like I'm cautious about alcohol, right? We know approximately 30% of cannabis users are at risk of developing cannabis use disorder. We know that high potency THC products are becoming increasingly common. And we know that daily use among young adults is at record levels. So does this mean that we should panic? No, but it does mean that we should ask questions. Because when daily chemical mood alteration becomes normalized, we have to examine what's happening underneath that normalization. Are we building emotional resilience, or are we refining avoidance? When we intentionally replace alcohol with something like cannabis, it may seem like a small step forward. And if you're drinking less and your goal is to drink less and you're using cannabis to do it, again, I don't want to say that's the wrong step, but we do want to look and understand whether or not we are swapping one thing for something else that may end up being a problem too. If the underlying belief remains, I cannot end my day without altering my state, then the dependency pattern hasn't truly shifted. It's just simply changed form. So let me offer you something very simple. If alcohol disappeared tomorrow, what would you reach for when you feel stressed, when you feel bored, when you feel lonely, overwhelmed? Would something else step in immediately? Can you just be with that feeling for a moment without trying to numb it or escape from it? This isn't about purity or being morally superior. It's just about awareness. There is nothing wrong with enjoyment. There's nothing wrong with choosing relaxation, but there is a difference between choosing something and needing something. And that difference is where resilience lives. Again, if you're drinking less, then that is great. It is meaningful. If you are actively working on understanding, creating awareness, questioning your relationship with alcohol, I am so happy, and that's what I want you to be doing. The work that actually creates peace is dismantling the belief that you need to escape in the first place. And truly, that is what becoming an alcohol minimalist means. Not abstinence, but we are looking for peace. We want to understand that we do not need to escape our lives, that we can handle. We can allow all emotion, the good, the bad. And that alcohol or any other substance isn't something that we need to get through our lives. It isn't like alcohol isn't just a big deal anymore, not because you've found something to take its place, but because you have realized that you actually don't need it. You have changed your mindset, and that's the piece that makes all the difference. Dr. Jaffe's article challenges us not to confuse cultural shifts with internal transformation, and I think that's wise. Less alcohol is progress. The fact that more people are drinking less is good news. But emotional resilience is what we are looking for. That is the true transformation. Those two things, while they are definitely related, are not automatically the same. And that's what we need to remain mindful of. All right, that's all I have for you today, my friends. Until next time, choose peace, and I will see you on Thursday. Thanks for listening to the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. Take something you learned from this week's episode and put it into action. Changing your drinking habits and creating a peaceful relationship with alcohol is 100% possible. You can stop worrying, stop feeling guilty about overdrinking, and become someone who desires alcohol less. I work with people in 2 different ways, and you can learn about them over at my website. Go to www.mollywatts.com/workwithme or reach out to me directly. Shoot me an email, molly@mollywatts.com. We'll jump on a call and decide what might work best for you. This podcast is really just the beginning of our conversation. Let's keep it going.
If there's one thing I know, it's that change is way easier when you stop trying to do it alone.